Hey guys, Stephanie with AmericanMuscle.com here with the Vogtland Sport Lowering Spring Kit for 2015 and up S550 Fastback Mustangs. We're going to be talking about a few different things with these springs, but mostly we'll talk about what you can expect from these springs in both the performance and looks categories, and we're also going to talk about the install as well. We'll talk more about the install later, but you're looking at a 1 out of 3 wrenches in the difficulty meter. The Vogtland Sport lowering springs are going to be a good option for those of you out there that are looking for a lowering spring for a daily driven car or a street car from a well-known and reputable brand with just a standard drop. These springs will work for occasional track use as well, but these are a progressive spring that's going to maintain ride quality and still provide performance and enhance the looks of the car as well. These springs offer a drop of 1 inch all the way around, which, like I mentioned before, is pretty standard in the world of lowering springs for the S550. Currently, one of the largest drops that you can find in a spring for the S550 is just over 1 inch, and these springs aren't far off of that. Of course, a lowering spring is going to lower the center of gravity to provide some handling improvements, like reducing squat and body roll in corners, and eliminating nosedive under hard braking. A 1 inch drop is enough of a drop to eliminate a lot of the gap between the tire and the fender, and it's going to leave the car sitting above the wheels and tires. Just for reference, we did install these on our 2015 with 255/40/19s on the front and 305/35/19s on the rear. The drop will look a little different depending on your wheel and tire setup. Getting back to the drop on an S550, the majority of springs out there are only offering a 1 inch drop. The S550 chassis doesn't need a huge drop to attain better looks or an improvement in handling. The S550 responds well to what some of the older generation Mustangs would consider a very small change in ride height. Be surprised at how well the S550 chassis responds to just a 1 inch drop in both the functional and looks categories. Now, Vogtland does also offer their Sport Plus springs, which give you that 1.3 inch drop if you guys think you want a little bit more of an aggressive drop than these springs offer. And these are going to be compatible with both the factory and aftermarket wheel and tire setups, but they're made for the fastback model only. Now, the plus side of the S550s looking so good and responding so well to a little bit of lowering is that you can create a functional low, and by that it means low enough to look good, but not low enough to cause issues either on the tire or under the car. It's going to leave you with a very streetable car still. The other thing to consider when you're shopping for springs besides the drop is the ride quality. And these are progressive spring, which means they have a progressive spring rate, and that means that they're a good option for a street car. They don't have a harsh ride quality, but they will firm up as you start pushing the car, which works to give you the best of both worlds between comfortable and functional. Sometimes you can get a rough ride quality when you start lowering the car more, but that's not the case with these springs. The ride isn't that much different from stock, besides the car having less body roll and being more planted overall. These aren't a stiff spring, they're more forgiving. The ride will be a little stiffer, but it's not going to be uncomfortable. Overall, these springs are intended for street and occasional track use, so they do give a stiffer than factory ride quality, but they're made to not be harsh, so still comfortable, but also able to perform when you want them to. As far as price, these springs are going to be right over that $200 mark, which is right where the majority of other springs are falling as well. Of course, there are some springs that are either less expensive or more expensive than that, and even springs that are all across that price range. So the install here is going to take about 4 hours, and I'm going to call it a solid 1 out of 3 wrenches on the scale because you will need some knowledge to complete this install, so I'd recommend having a knowledgeable helping hand or taking this to a shop for the install if you haven't done this before, especially since it's always a good idea to get an alignment after the install anyways. The install can be done on jack stands if you don't have access to a lift, but as usual, a lift would be your best bet here. You're going to need a few tools, including a spring compressor, so make sure you have that before you start the install. You're going to need to get down to the spring and strut assemblies, so everything like the wheels, the brakes, the ABS lines will need to be moved out of the way so you can pull the assemblies out of the car. The spring compressor will help you remove the spring from the strut and install the new front springs, which are compressed and installed the same way. The strut assemblies go back the same way they came out, and the install is the same for both sides. The rear is where things are a little bit different, but nothing crazy here. Essentially, the IRS subframe will need to be dropped along with the rear shock mount so you can slide the rear springs out. Just like the front, the rear springs installed the same way that they uninstall. There's no surprises here. The new springs can be installed and the IRS subframe can be bolted back up, and that's about all it's going to take. Like I mentioned earlier, a fresh alignment after the install isn't a bad idea. Wrapping things up here, the Vogtland Sport lowering springs offer a 1 inch drop all the way around the car. They have a progressive spring rate and are designed for street and occasional track use. As always, I suggest you check these out more online for yourself. And for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.